Hi everybody, and welcome to the final video for the Distress album. There were a lot of videos and I know a lot of you like it, but I get the feeling that maybe it wasn't a favorite of most viewers because it's not quite as popular as the other videos. But even with that being said, I love this album. I really do. It was fun to make, and I love the backgrounds, like playing with the Distress Oxide ink sprays and the spray stains. I don't know, I liked all of it. So while it may not be the most popular, it's not going to change my opinion on how I feel about the album, and that the album makes me happy. And that's all that matters. So here I am gluing the album together, and on this page I actually should not have glued the whole thing together because that little notch means that that's a pocket. And even after I glued it together, I didn't realize it until I took it to my sewing machine. And see, I'm even showing. And it still didn't clue in that I should not have glued that whole page together. So this, before I started sewing, I thought it would be a lot easier than what it actually was. So there was a lot of having to stop and start because you couldn't simply just run down the full length of the 2-page spread because it's just not the way it works with having so many pages. So I really don't know what to tell you. I just sewed along the top of the first half of the page, and then I would have to stop and open it up so that there were no other pages underneath the other side in order to sew along the top of that one. I'm sure it's probably confusing as you're watching it, but once you actually do it, you realize, okay, well, I can't do that because that'll sew all the pages together. So nothing has to be perfect. Most of the time when I'm making something, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going with the flow and figuring it out as I go. And sometimes I make mistakes and I have to fix it and redo it. But it doesn't take away from the end result. I mean, this is something that you're doing for yourself. And when you're making something that's grungy, it just adds character to the album. Like, there are sewing mistakes in this album, and there's holes where there was sewing that there wasn't supposed to be sewing, but it doesn't bother me at all. Now for this sewing, I am just doing a simple straight stitch. You can do a zigzag if you like, or you can go around more than once and just give it that messy look. You can do straight, you can do swervy lines. Do whatever you want to do. It is your album. And also, if you don't want to sew or you don't have a sewing machine, you don't have to do this part. You can just get some really good adhesive and just join the pages together like back to back. That's all you have to do. You can even faux stitch some lines, like no sewing thread, just take a black pen and a ruler and just do some dotted lines all around the page if you like. Be a lot easier. That, or instead of sewing once the album is together, sew around the whole spread before putting it all together so you have the look of the sewed lines, but then use glue or tape to stick the album together. So here I am realizing that this page is a pocket. Now, I think I already took it apart, because it was glued, but luckily where it was just glue stick, I was able to pry it apart. Oh, no, that's what I'm realizing now. So it was a little bit sticky still, and I was afraid that it would adhere. So I'm taking some baby powder and just going over the sticky parts, and all the stick is gone. And the album smells nice. So I'm just seeing how far my sewing line has to go, and it's not very far at all. I mean, really, I could have skipped sewing any of the top portion and just did the sides and the bottom. And by the way, I am loving my new sewing machine. I needed a new sewing machine for a while, and I went to a store here in town that sells fabrics and sewing machines. And oh my goodness, the prices for their sewing machines were ridiculous. And there was a sewing machine that's pretty much like the one I have. Like, it's not the same name. And I feel like there was one more feature that it had that this one doesn't. It might be the automatic cutting of the thread. It might be that feature, which would be awesome. But this sewing machine only cost, I think it was somewhere around $200. It might have been like $230 or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was at least $200. If you really need to know, I can look it up. But anyway, so let's say the sewing machine was around $200. Oh, first here I made a mistake. I was sewing along the bottom, and my tag is inside the pocket, and the tag was so far down that it got sewed to the page as well. So see, made a mistake, and now I had to take all those stitching out and redo it. So anyway, this sewing machine was probably around $200, and it does everything that I need it to do. And the one in the store in town was, I think the cheapest one they had was around $600, and that was on sale. He really stressed how it was on sale, and I really think he was going to get me to buy it, but I just couldn't. It's not like I'm a quilter or a seamstress or anything like that. And I'm using it for craft things, so I could very well wreck it. I don't want to spend like $600 or more on something that I may wreck. But yeah, $600 was a cheap one. Most of their sewing machines were like in the thousands. But again, some of the people that buy those sewing machines, that's how they make their living. Like, they're making quilts and clothing and all kinds of stuff. Or it's their main hobby, like mixed media is my hobby. Theirs may be something to do with sewing. So I could see it there, but not for what I need. So that was a lot of rambling. But we got through the sewing of the album. So all the pages are put together, and I'm just doing a flip through of the album to show you. That envelope may be one of my absolute favorite things about the whole album. That and the cover. I really like how the cover turns out. And see, those are the holes from the oops sewing. Playing with the inks and the Oxide sprays were so much fun doing these backgrounds. I'm actually considering, not right now, but maybe doing another album but in a different size and shape. So now I'm just measuring how big I want my cover to be. And I want it a little bit bigger than that piece of paper there. But I still want the edges to peek through. So it looks like I'm going with 9 1/4 by 7 1/4. I'm getting all my sprays out and ready. And I had one cover made and I really loved it, but I just couldn't use it for the album because the first cover I made was like very vibrant and bold colors. And the album is not like that on the inside at all. It's more muted and toned down. So I had to make a whole new cover. That's why I was flipping through the pages to try to make sure that I got some more cohesiveness with the colors and stuff, so it would flow better. So this is a stamp set from Simon Says Stamps, and I'm taking archival ink in Vintage Photo, and I didn't want it to fully cover the background. I just want a little bit of interest for the background. Now all these other stamps that I'm using in these little grouping and clusters, these are all from the Tim Holtz Stamp Set Ladies and Gentlemen from Stampers Anonymous. And that color of ink is Ground Espresso. And I'm loving all those inks in that tin are Tim Holtz archival ink pads in his colors, and I love them. I use them a lot actually, like when doing these kinds of things. I mean, it works perfectly. They're in the same colors of his sprays and his ink pads and all that stuff, except it's archival, so you don't have to worry about it bleeding. Okay, and here I am using black soot. I love the gear stamp. I love his stamps where he puts the lines in and little bits of words, and it's like architecture type plans and stuff like that. I love that style. So here I'm taking peeled paint, and again this is still a stamp from that same stamp set, Ladies and Gentlemen. Now I wrote out the colors before I started this background because I may not know what I grab with each color, but I gave you a list of the colors. So I mean, you can try and figure it out just as much as I can. It's hard to tell sometimes which one I grabbed, but sometimes you can give a good guess with the colors. Like that looks like walnut stain, but not in the Distress Oxide, just the stain. I like that, even just like that, I really like it. I'm spritzing the page with water first before I add the oxides. And that, if I were to guess, looked like mustard seed and some rusty hinge maybe. I'm going too fast. That was ice spruce that I splatted down. I think that was fossilized amber as well. That's spun sugar. And this stamp set, I believe it's called Lost. It's Tim Holtz anyway, Stampers Anonymous. And I'm using Cracked Pistachio Distress Oxide ink pad. And this one, it's a set of 3 and it says set 33. And again, it's Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous. And that is fossilized amber in the Distress Oxide ink pad. I love that color. My spray in that color, and I think it was Spice Marmalade, like 2 of my favorite colors. They don't have that little ball in them. But I mean, they're still working. That looks like frayed burlap. And that was walnut stain. This paper you see here that I'm cutting with the die, that is one of the backgrounds that I had used for my first album cover that I made. And that die is Spellbinder's Nestabilities, and it's called Labels 2. I mean, this paper alone would be fine with the album, but it was a mixture of different ones, and the other ones were a bit too bold and vibrant, and the colors weren't quite the same as what was inside the album. So I'm also taking the same die but in a larger size and cutting some Black Recollections cardstock. So I'm going to layer them up. Just roughing up the edges with my scissors. And going around the edges with some walnut stain distress ink. So I just took a scrap piece of paper and I'm going to color it with some, this one's Bundled Sage, and that was Distress Oxide, Frayed Burlap, and Walnut Distress Ink, not Oxide. And I would guess that's frayed burlap as well, because I was loving the reaction and how it dries and how you get different colors in the one spray. It's a beautiful, I can see me going through that spray faster than most of the others, because it goes with everything. And that one looks like cracked pistachio. And I would guess that was walnut stain, but not in an oxide. And inking around the edge of this one with some walnut stain distress ink as well. And I'm taking some old rub-ons, like, I mean, probably like 15 years old. They're from 7 Gypsies. I never buy rub-ons anymore, but they are great for this kind of stuff. And I'm just going over with some gel medium because I was afraid it would come off. And I'd just rather be safe than sorry. Because it is old, so I don't know how well they last, like when they haven't been used. I have no idea. I'm just taking some old brads and some eyelets from, again, forever ago. I'm kind of glad, well, not kind of, I am glad that I've held on to a lot of my old stash stuff because I get to use it in this. I mean, it comes in handy. It's not great for storage, and it looks like you have lots and lots of stuff, but it comes in handy. It's been a while since I've used my nestabilities as well. And again, going around with walnut stain distress ink, just to make it a little more grungy looking. I just love all that ink. I just love how they play together, like the stains and the oxides. It's just gorgeous. And the colors. He came out with some beautiful colors. Can't wait to get my hands on the other ones. See, that may be another reason to make another album, because I'll have more colors. I may go a bit overboard with adhesive, but I don't know. At least it probably won't go anywhere. I'm using my Old Making Memories eyelet setter tool to make the holes and to set the eyelets. That one took a bit because it was going through quite a bit of layers. Like that's 1, 2, 3 layers of thick paper. Well, 4 a bit because that little observations paper. This is where I tend to fuss a lot too, trying to figure out placements. Be very careful when using the poker tool and be aware of where your fingers are. No, I didn't stab myself, but I can only imagine how much it would hurt. I originally got this idea from, it was a class I took here in town, and her name is Hillary, and she made, the class I took by her, it was making 2 cards, and she just, in parts of the cards, she did this, like she had eyelets in the middle, like it didn't have a purpose, it was just purely decorative, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I'm so glad I took that class. Like, she is amazing with her inks as well. But she is not a fan of Oxide. She likes the regular distress. But then she took my class using the Oxide. So I don't know if she ended up buying any or not. If I ever run into her again, I'll have to ask her if she plays with the Oxides now. And some of the holes I just left empty with no eyelets in them. I just like the look because then you get that little bit of black popping through. Now for the spine, I'm just using some of that felt that I buy at the dollar store. Well, Dollarama, I think ours is called. And these are just homemade paper beads from old scrapbooking paper. And I didn't go too fancy with the spine. I just added a few beads and then did a little bit of, I think it was like X's, like stitching. So I just sewed the felt onto 2 pieces of black cardstock for the cover. Oh, sorry, it's a bit blurry. Well, a lot blurry. It's fine once it's down on the ground, on the table. But I guess the autofocus is not working too well. This is just where I'm adding a few X's to add a little bit more interest to the spine. So what I do here is I attach the cover to the black cardstock, and on the inside where you could see the felt, I ended up adding another piece of black cardstock on that side as well, just to cover that up and make it look a bit neater. It's not necessary if you don't mind seeing the felt like and where it attaches to the cardstock, then just leave that part out. So that is it for this album. I really hope you enjoyed the series, and again, I apologize for the missing clips on one of the videos, but luckily we have not had any problems since then. And though maybe I shouldn't say that because this isn't uploaded yet. So thank you so much for watching, and thanks for all the support and the beautiful comments that you always leave me. Take care. Bye.